The laughter started before the engine even quit. Daniel's old vintage car coughed violently, stuttered once, twice, then fell completely silent in the middle of the dealership driveway. The polished luxury vehicles around him gleamed in the morning sun, each one a silent reminder of what people here considered worthy. His car was the odd one out, faded, worn, but more than functional. Daniel's hands clenched the steering wheel for a moment. The murmurs of employees and customers drifting from the glass showroom reached his ears. A junior mechanic let out a nervous chuckle. Daniel exhaled slowly, forcing calm into his voice. "Just needs a second," he muttered under his breath, turning the key again. Click. Nothing. He pushed open the door and stepped out. The metal of the car was warm under his hands, and he brushed lightly over the hood, a gesture more habit than necessity. Years ago, this car belonged to his father. It wasn't flashy, but it ran like a dream when treated right. From inside the showroom, the glass doors slid open with a whisper of motion. Mark Caldwell appeared, perfectly dressed, coffee in hand, sunglasses reflecting the lot. His presence made the space feel smaller. "What's going on here?" Mark asked, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. His gaze swept over the small crowd forming around Daniel's car. Daniel straightened. "It stalled, sir. I'll move it in a minute." Mark let out a short laugh, low and sharp. "Our senior mechanic's car stalled?" His words carried like a whip. A few employees exchanged glances, uncomfortable. One cough escaped, awkward, nervous. Mark's smile widened, but his eyes glinted with malice. "Maybe we should advertise it. We fix everything, except our own mechanic's ride." More laughter followed, louder this time. Customers glanced over, some smirking, some just curious. Daniel felt heat rise to his face, but controlled the outward calm. He closed the hood, fingers brushing the worn metal, and for a moment, he remembered his father's steady hands guiding him under the hood, teaching him patience, precision, and dignity. Mark wasn't finished. He stepped closer, voice raised. "Tell me something, Daniel. If you can't keep your own car running, how are clients supposed to trust you with theirs?" Daniel's jaw tightened. He forced himself to keep a neutral expression. "My work record speaks for itself," he replied evenly. The circle of onlookers grew slightly, whispers threading through the lot. Some employees averted their eyes. Others leaned in, curious. Mark smirked. "Investors are visiting soon," he announced to everyone. "Last thing we need is embarrassment. Maybe it's time we reconsider who represents this place." The implication hung thickly in the air. Daniel felt the familiar sting of humiliation, the weight of unfair judgment pressing on his shoulders. His reputation, earned over years, was being questioned in front of people who had no understanding of his skill. A junior mechanic gave a timid glance, muttering something Daniel couldn't hear. He ignored it, moving to kneel by the front tire, pretending to check something. His hands worked with practiced precision, tightening a minor connection, smoothing out what little issue remained, a simple fix that anyone with knowledge could do in seconds. Mark watched from a few steps away, basking in the visible discomfort. "Please move it," he said finally, "before someone thinks we're running a discount lot." Daniel stood, breathing slowly, calming the rush of embarrassment threatening to rise. He reached for his phone. It vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at the screen. The name made his eyes widen slightly. Surprise, not fear, passed over his face. He stepped away from the gathering crowd and answered quietly. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was calm, professional, but there was weight behind it. Daniel listened, his posture stiffening, eyes flicking back toward the showroom where Mark had disappeared for a moment. "You're coming here?" he asked softly. A pause, then a faint chuckle from the voice on the line. "Yes, I understand," Daniel said quietly, ending the call. He slipped the phone into his pocket and looked back at the crowd. Mark's laughter, the whispers, the judgment, all of it felt heavier now. But in Daniel's chest, something had shifted, a spark of anticipation, a quiet awareness that the coming events would not let this injustice stand. He straightened, squared his shoulders, and walked back to the car. The engine purred alive effortlessly as he turned the key, a silent contrast of mockery that had filled the morning. But Daniel knew the day was far from over. Outside, the lot seemed frozen, waiting. Waiting for what? Daniel had no idea, but he sensed it would be bigger than any insult he had endured. Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket, and he felt it vibrate like a pulse of destiny. He glanced at the screen, recognized the number, and quickly silenced it. He couldn't answer there, not with Mark looming nearby, smug in his arrogance, laughing at the events of yesterday as if nothing mattered. The engine problem was insignificant. A minor loose connection he could fix in minutes. But the call hinted at something far larger. Daniel didn't yet know what, only that it had the power to shift everything. He took a deep breath and knelt beside his car, running a practice hand over the engine. Within moments, he had it running smoothly again. The soft purr of the motor felt like a quiet victory, a reminder that skill and patience could overcome humiliation. A few employees who had lingered exchanged glances, sensing Daniel's silent competence. But outside, the lot buzzed with subtle whispers. Conversations paused when he walked by. Eyes followed him, unsure, curious, but tinged with sympathy. By mid-morning, Daniel could feel the weight of judgment still pressing down on him. Not from the car, but from a man who claimed authority over him. Mark's laughter echoed faintly from his glass office, punctuated by sharp, deliberate coughs as he rehearsed charm for unseen clients. Daniel wiped his hands on a rag and approached the office door. He stopped a few feet away, maintaining a polite distance. "I need to request a half-day off this Friday," he said evenly, projecting calm. Mark raised an eyebrow, lips curling in amusement. "A personal matter?" His tone carried both disbelief and veiled mockery. "After your performance yesterday?" Daniel kept his eyes steady. "Yes, personal matter. Family issue." Mark leaned back in his chair, swirling his coffee, a forced smile plastered across his face. "You know, Daniel, optics matter. Investors will be here. Half-day denied. Focus on work. No distractions." Daniel felt the tension coil in his chest. The denial stung, but he stayed calm. "Understood." Mark's smile sharpened. "Oh, and by the way, the Barrett account? Reassigned." Daniel froze slightly. Mr. Barrett was one of the dealership's most loyal, high-paying clients. He had always requested Daniel personally. Losing him was more than a professional setback. It was a deliberate, public undermining of Daniel's reputation. "He'll survive," Mark said, a thinly veiled challenge in his voice. "We need team players, not personal fan clubs." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. He nodded, walking away. Each step felt heavier than the last. The injustice of it, the deliberate targeting, pressed against him like a weight. An hour later, the sharp roar of a black executive SUV cut through the hum of the lot. Daniel glanced up. Mr. Barrett stepped out, cufflinks glinting in the sun, expression calm but expectant. "Daniel," Mr. Barrett called, "I trust you with this engine." Daniel glanced toward the office. Mark was watching, his smile tight, strained. "I'm actually reassigned today," Daniel replied, voice measured. Mr. Barrett's brow furrowed. "Reassigned? By who?" Mark stepped forward, attempting to assert control. "Just optimizing workflow," he said, voice smooth. Mr. Barrett didn't flinch. "Well, optimize me back. I'll wait." The subtle tension thickened. Employees were silent, watching. Mark's confidence wavered ever so slightly, but just enough for everyone to notice. Daniel's phone buzzed again. The same number. His heart tightened with anticipation. He stepped away to answer quietly. "Yes," he said. The voice on the line was calm, measured, but carried weight. "Friday won't work. It has to be tomorrow during the inspection." Daniel blinked. "Tomorrow? Are you sure?" "Yes." "And Daniel, don't speak yet. Let him." The line cut off abruptly. Daniel swallowed. His mind raced. The unseen force behind the call was powerful. Someone with authority. Someone who could tip the scales of justice in his favor. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and returned to Mr. Barrett's car, his calm demeanor masking the storm inside. He could feel the lot's attention subtly shifting, the employees watching both Mark and him, sensing the first cracks in Mark's arrogance. Mark's eyes narrowed. Something in Daniel's posture, and the way he returned to work suggested an unspoken challenge. He forced a laugh, trying to reclaim authority, but it fell flat. Daniel's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with anticipation. The unfairness of yesterday had been sharp, painful, and public. But tomorrow, the game would change. And the way of the call, the hidden truth hinted at, left him with one thought. By the time Mark realized what was coming, there would be no hiding. By mid-morning, the dealership had a different pulse. The air felt heavier, charged with expectation, as if the lot itself knew something significant was about to happen. Employees moved quietly, casting occasional glances toward Daniel in the glass-walled office where Mark paced, pretending control while his confidence frayed. Daniel arrived early, parking at the far end of the lot. His old car, now purring smoothly, was a quiet reminder that skill and care could overcome neglect. But the real challenge wasn't the car, it was Mark, and the subtle but constant undermining that had plagued him for years. Mark stepped out of his office the moment Daniel walked in, arms crossed, eyes scanning the lot like a predator asserting territory. "Lay again," he asked, voice sharp, designed to assert dominance. "Traffic." Daniel replied evenly, keeping his calm. His voice, steady and controlled, was a shield against Mark's provocation. From the far end of the lot, a deep engine roar sliced through the morning calm. Heads turned automatically. A sleek black SUV rolled into the dealership, its tinted windows reflecting the morning sun. The driver's door opened, and a man in a perfectly tailored suit stepped out, exuding authority and quiet command. Daniel froze for a moment, recognition flickering in his eyes. Thomas Reyes, a high-level inspector, known for impartiality, decisiveness, and uncanny ability to see the truth behind appearances. Mark's confident smirk faltered immediately. He took a half step forward, clearly caught off guard. "And you are?" he asked, a thin edge of uncertainty creeping into his voice. Thomas ignored Mark entirely, walking straight toward Daniel. "I've been expecting you," he said, voice calm, measured, and authoritative. "Are you ready for the inspection?" Daniel swallowed but didn't speak. His jaw tightened slightly, a quiet reflection of the tension coiling in the lot. He nodded subtly. Thomas glanced around the lot, scanning the employees, their faces, their posture. "Who was the lead mechanic here?" he asked. Every pair of eyes turned to Daniel. A junior mechanic muttered his name under his breath. Mark forced a laugh, trying to maintain control. "Daniel here," he said, voice brittle. Thomas raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable, and lingered on Daniel a moment longer. There was weight in that look, a subtle acknowledgement of competence, of latent power that Mark could not yet grasp. Daniel felt it too, a quiet shift in the room's energy. Employees who had remained hesitant yesterday now exchanged glances, sensing the first cracks in Mark's authority. Even the clients nearby sensed it, though they didn't understand the details, just an imbalance of power. "Lead technician," Thomas repeated, gesturing toward Daniel. "Let's start with the client vehicles." Mark tried to interject, flustered. Thomas's gaze cut him off. "I want Daniel to take the lead. Observe." The subtle tension in the air thickened. Employees, some still whispering, could see Mark's confidence waver. He coughed nervously, fidgeting with his tie. For the first time, his carefully maintained facade showed cracks. As Daniel walked toward the first vehicle, he felt a quiet surge of awareness. This wasn't just about him fixing a car or enduring Mark's mockery. This was a turning point, a moment where truth and skill could finally outweigh arrogance and intimidation. Thomas stopped a few feet ahead, his gaze sweeping over the lot. Then he asked quietly, loud enough for Daniel to hear, "Daniel, was this manager the one who humiliated you yesterday?" The words cut through the quiet like a knife. A hush fell over the lot. Employees froze mid-step. Even Mark, usually quick to dominate attention, froze, a bead of sweat forming on his forehead. Daniel felt the familiar sting of past injustices, but now it was tempered by anticipation, by the sense that things were about to change dramatically. He met Thomas's gaze, a silent, understanding passing between them. Patience, preparation, and integrity had led to this moment. Mark's lips parted, as if to defend himself, but no words came. The lot held its breath, the balance of power hanging by a thread. Then Thomas's phone buzzed. He glanced at it briefly, expression unreadable, but Daniel noticed a faint smirk that hinted at alignment with the plan, the unseen force orchestrating the justice about to unfold. Daniel's chest tightened. The humiliation, the isolation, the constant undermining, all of it had been leading to this midpoint. And now, the power was shifting. Mark's eyes flicked nervously between Thomas and Daniel, realizing too late that the tide had turned. What had been a public display of his dominance was becoming a stage for his unraveling. Daniel exhaled slowly, ready to step into the new dynamic. The lot, the staff, the clients, all eyes were on him, and he knew with a quiet certainty that by the end of this day, everything would change. The lot was unusually quiet by mid-afternoon. Employees moved deliberately, their conversations hushed, stolen glances darting toward Daniel and the imposing figure of Thomas Reyes, who had been quietly observing every movement since his arrival. The tension in the air was palpable, like a taut wire ready to snap. Daniel knelt beside the next client vehicle, running his hands over the engine with careful precision. Each adjustment was deliberate, methodical, almost ritualistic. Every click of a tool, every smooth rotation of a wrench, spoke louder than the laughter and judgment he had endured yesterday. This wasn't just fixing a car, it was a subtle reclamation of his dignity, though few would realize it yet. Mark Caldwell lingered nearby, pacing just outside the line of sight. His confident exterior was beginning to crack, and his usual sneers were replaced by sharp, strained smiles that did little to mask his unease. He glanced at employees, trying to rally them silently to his side, but the energy had shifted. Whispers followed him instead, subtle murmurs of acknowledgement toward Daniel. "Daniel," Thomas said suddenly, breaking the quiet, his voice calm but commanding. "Explain exactly what happened yesterday. Start from the beginning." Mark's face paled as the employees all turned to listen. Even the clients in the showroom leaned closer, curiosity piqued. Daniel straightened, steadying his voice. "Yesterday," he began, "my car stalled briefly. Nothing serious. I handled it immediately. But instead of being judged on my work, I was humiliated publicly, mocked in front of staff, clients, and the management team. My competence, my reputation, everything I built over the years was questioned because of a small, fixable issue, something anyone with knowledge would understand." Mark shifted uncomfortably, attempting a laugh that sounded brittle and forced. "It was motivation. Teaching humility." Daniel met his gaze evenly. "Humiliation is not motivation." The words hung in the air, firm and unyielding. A ripple of murmurs went through the staff, subtle nods and quiet affirmations. Daniel continued calmly, but with quiet intensity. "Throughout my career, I've faced challenges quietly. I've endured snide remarks, doubted decisions, and watched arrogance overshadow merit. But yesterday, what was done to me crossed a line. Public embarrassment, questions about my skill, and undermining authority in front of clients. That isn't leadership. That's abuse of power." Thomas's gaze swept the lot, taking in every expression, every subtle body language. "And this," he said, looking at Mark, "is why I am here." Mark's shoulders tensed. I don't understand." "You can't." "Silence," Thomas interrupted, cutting through the tension like a blade. "Let Daniel finish." Daniel inhaled deeply, letting the truth flow naturally, his voice steady despite the pressure. Mark's decisions yesterday weren't just careless. They were deliberate, reassigning my accounts, mocking my abilities, undermining client trust. It's a pattern. And today, we have witnesses, documentation, and proof. I've done nothing but my job professionally. And yet, he tries to make it seem otherwise. A junior mechanic hesitated, then stepped forward. "It's true, sir, we all saw it. He humiliated Daniel." The words carried a quiet weight that amplified the moment. Mark's face flushed. Sweat beaded at his temple. He opened his mouth to argue, but found no words. The employees' shifting glances, the client's attention, and Thomas's calm authority all combined into a perfect storm, and he was unprepared. Daniel's phone buzzed again. He glanced discreetly. Same number as before. The message was simple. "Tomorrow, during the inspection, let the truth speak." Everything unfolds then. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, his pulse quickening. The unseen force behind the call was orchestrating events that could finally tilt the scales of justice. Daniel's chest tightened, not with fear, but with anticipation. Mark, sensing the impending collapse of his authority, tried one last desperate maneuver. Everyone listen. This isn't how we handle things. Daniel is exaggerating. Thomas raised a hand, silencing him instantly. This isn't up for debate anymore. Facts, witnesses, and performance reports speak for themselves. Actions have consequences. Mark, your leadership decisions are under review, and your behavior yesterday will be addressed publicly. The words landed like a hammer. Employees shifted uneasily, yet with subtle relief, as the injustice of yesterday hung openly in the air. Mark's veneer control had cracked entirely, exposing the arrogance and insecurity he had tried to hide. Daniel exhaled, a mixture of relief and tense anticipation flooding him. The humiliation that had haunted him for days now seemed like the prelude to something larger. He looked at the lot, at the staff, at Mark's faltering posture. One thought crystallized in his mind. By the time tomorrow's inspection concluded, no amount of arrogance could mask the truth, and the hidden force, the authority orchestrating the coming reveal, had positioned everything perfectly. This was more than justice waiting in the wings. It was the moment the scales would finally tip. The morning sun had climbed higher, but the lot felt unusually still, as if holding its breath. Every employee, every client, every bystander seemed drawn toward the tension that had been building all week. Daniel walked toward the central area of the dealership, his step steady, chest firm. His old car sat quietly at the edge of the lot, polished, functional, but no longer the center of ridicule. Today, the real test was about to unfold. Thomas Reyes stepped forward, authoritative and calm, the epitome of measured power. His gaze swept across the lot, landing finally on Mark Caldwell, who was pacing nervously, trying to project control. Mark's thin veneer of confidence had cracked. His forced smiles and rehearsed gestures betrayed the anxiety Daniel had been anticipating for days. "Mark," Thomas said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the lot, "you have some explaining to do." Mark froze, his eyes darting to staff, who now watched intently. "Explaining? I was motivating him. It was meant to." "Motivation?" Thomas interrupted, voice sharp, cutting through Mark's defense like a knife. "Mocking a skilled employee publicly, undermining client trust, reassigning loyal accounts, and humiliating someone for a minor, fixable problem. That's not motivation. That's abuse of power." Daniel stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment. "Yesterday, my car stalled. Minor issue, handled immediately. But instead of evaluating my work, I was mocked, questioned, and diminished in front of clients and staff. It wasn't about the car. It was about making me look small, making me feel powerless, and asserting dominance. That isn't leadership. That's cruelty." A murmur of agreement ran through the employees. Some nodded, subtle but pointed, while others exchanged glances of relief. Quiet acknowledgement that Daniel's experience of humiliation was recognized and validated. Mark's face turned red. He opened his mouth to argue, but the words faltered. Sweat formed along his hairline, betraying his tension. Thomas raised his hand, silencing the murmurs. "I've reviewed client feedback, employee reports, and the events of yesterday. Daniel's performance has always been exemplary. Your behavior, Mark, has consistently undermined morale, professionalism, and trust. And now, it has been documented publicly." Mark stammered, trying to regain authority. This isn't fair." "Fairness," Daniel interrupted gently but firmly, "is not determined by arrogance or title. Fairness is based on truth and respect. Yesterday, you failed. Today, the truth is visible for everyone to see." Thomas gestured toward the employees. "Daniel has been recommended for operations director. He has earned this position through skill, integrity, and patience. And Mark," his gaze locked onto Mark's crumbling posture, "your leadership here ends immediately. Professional misconduct, public humiliation, and undermining authority are not tolerated. You are relieved of all duties." The words landed like a hammer. Employees shifted in quiet celebration. Whispers of finally and about time rippled through the lot. Clients, once unaware of the personal dynamics, now sensed a shift in energy. The arrogance they had glimpsed yesterday was dissolving before their eyes. Mark's face fell completely. He tried one last desperate gesture, pointing at Daniel. "You! Someone must have called. This isn't right." Daniel took a slow, deliberate step forward, voice calm and unwavering. "No one called for revenge. I've earned my place through years of dedication, skill, and integrity. That is all. What you see is the consequence of your actions, not manipulation." Thomas nodded. "Daniel, effective immediately, you will oversee all operations for this dealership. Your professionalism, competence, and leadership are recognized not only by me, but by everyone here. And Mark, consider this a lesson in humility and accountability." Mark slumped, defeated. His authority evaporated before the witnesses who had once feared his scorn. Employees exhaled collectively, a mix of relief and validation. Daniel felt the weight of the moment. Years of subtle humiliation, unfair scrutiny, and mockery had culminated in this public vindication. He looked at his old car, touching the hood lightly. Memories of his father's guidance flashed. "Hands steady," calm instruction, a lesson in quiet strength. "Patience and integrity speak louder than anger," his father had said. Daniel turned to the staff, addressing them softly but firmly. "Remember this. Integrity, skill, and respect matter more than arrogance, titles, or loud words. Treat each other with respect, and your work will always speak for itself." The staff nodded, some with tears in their eyes, others with wide smiles. Daniel's calm authority had replaced the tension that had dominated the dealership for too long. As he climbed into his car, the engine purred effortlessly. He looked around the lot one last time, at colleagues, clients, and even Mark, now silent and defeated. He smiled faintly, not with arrogance, but with the quiet satisfaction of justice delivered fairly and thoroughly. Driving away, Daniel felt an inner peace wash over him. The injustice had been corrected, the antagonist exposed, and dignity restored. Justice had not been about vengeance, but about truth, recognition, and rightful authority. The lot, the staff, the clients, all had witnessed a lesson in integrity. Daniel's quiet strength had spoken louder than insult, arrogance, or mockery. If this story touched your heart, like and subscribe for more powerful stories of courage, justice, and unexpected reversals. And don't forget, comment where you're watching from. Your support helps keep these stories coming.